Namaste, everybody. Welcome to the final episode of Ripples in the Sand, the podcast brought to you by the folks at Drifting Sands Haibun. For the past several months, we invited Haibun poets to read and discuss their poetry, give us their thoughts on the craft of writing Haibun or tanka prose, which, as you know, is prose with haiku or a tanka. This is your host, Sangita Kalarikal. Today, for the last time, we have for you some lovely haibun. In January this year, we brought you haibun by the Drifting Sands team. This is part 2 of the team reading. You have heard the introduction of our team members already, so let's get started with the founder of Drifting Sands, Richard Grahn, reading Following in His Own Footsteps, after which you will hear his poem, Bedside Manner.
Following in his own footsteps. He tends his dream till the break of dawn. Songbirds gathering in the field signal it's time to harvest. Here beneath the clouds, a boy feels the first drops of sky dripping from the leaves. Soon he's a walking sponge, the trail oozing around his soles. A humming patter lulls the forest to sleep. He pauses at the top of a rise, the valley below frozen in time like an Ansel Adams photograph. Damp moss blankets a rotting log. Time perfumes the air with the sweet scent of death feeding life. He takes the long way home, but when he gets there, he just keeps walking into the sunset. Many paths traveled. The pilgrim follows a dove as if it could carry a mountain. 50 years later, on another rainy day, he pulls out a weathered memory and like a muddy shoe begins to clean it off. He feels drenched cotton clinging to his skin, sees a shaft of sunlight poking through the clouds, hears a chipmunk chirp, a doe and fawn bound across the trail, then out comes a rainbow that tells him to move on. Repurposing toy box relics. Viewing the moon through his kaleidoscope, he finds a field of stars. Bedside Manor. Frosty hospital window. From this bed, my reflection for a view. After spending a sleepless night, listening to my ticker for the slightest irregularity, even the ones in my imagination, I finally doze off just before dawn. The cardiologist wakes me an hour later, accompanied by my favorite nurse, Carol, and tells me my heart is in good shape. It just pops out of me like air out of a balloon. That must mean I have a good heart. His glare could freeze antifreeze. Carol has your discharge papers, he grunts before swaggering out of the room. Code blue. X-ray his funny bone for signs of life. Stat.
Now we have our associate editor, Reid Hepworth, with Chance Meeting.
This is Reid Hepworth reading Chance Meeting, originally published by haikuKATHA, Issue 10, 2022, and the Red Moon Anthology, Skipping Stones, published 2023. Chance Meeting. The animal waddles onto the road. My mind registers that it's a dog just as I drive past. What the heck? I think, as I double-check my rearview mirror and scramble to find a place to pull over. The dog, a rotund little dachshund with a pink bejeweled collar, noses around the edge of the highway as I play Death Wish, running in and out of traffic. My nerves are shot by the time I reach the dog. Sensing me and the busy roadway, the dog stops sniffing and stares at me from its orb-like eyes. Its pint-sized head a study in still life. It looks like it's willing itself to disappear. I hear the squeal of brakes before I see the semi-truck. I quickly grab the dog and pick it up. Not an easy feat with 25 pounds of dead weight and a bad back. Date night. We laugh about how we met. Date night. We laugh about how we met. Thank you.
Next, we have the team member who manages much of our social media activities, Pris with Last Cat, followed by Resourceful.
Last cat. Last cat crouches in the backyard grass, waiting for the human to set out his dinner. He waits until sunset to rush from his home under the shed across the street. He won't go near until the human leaves, but he's glad to have a meal to fill his belly now. No more digging around loose garbage or going without. A small cat has been living inside. She often stares at him through the sliding glass window. Sometimes he looks back at her, wonders how she bears losing her freedom. Not for him, never, ever. 3 nights ago at mealtime, he saw the humans through the window crying. Small cat is still missing. No more peeking out. He has a new bowl when dinner is brought out. The center of her is in the cloth on the bench. That night when the man-humans started calling him Last Cat, Small Cat has become Gone Cat. He likes the name. He repeats it to himself when he's back at his shed. Last cat, last cat. Shooting star. Someone's wish is lost in the night. Resourceful. And the year of no, as in no way and no how, needing his advice as my cushion, my father suddenly dies. Relatives swarm our family home, comforting my stunned mother and sharing massive amounts of turkey and ham brought in by the community as we gather our inner resources for the funeral. Disabled by grief, when we arrive outside the already filled church, the congregation singing hymns from my childhood, my heart pounds, knees buckle. My mother reminds me that I was not to break down, weep so anyone can see, or, God forbid, throw myself over the casket like my bipolar cousin did when her own father died. So I bite my lip, carry myself out of my body when the urge to humiliate my family grows too great. Watch the minister exhort us to feel joyful, but he really means those joy words from my father's ears, picked off from the herd so quickly, gone to see his maker, bad left cold and garden fallow. Well, I'm left wondering how I can shed tears openly over my dog's death or a husband's abandonment, but not at the most important loss in my life thus far. Songs stifled, well bones lie silent below the Wadi Hitan.
We now have someone you'll hear for the first time. He is the copy editor for Drifting Sands, Gabriel, a doctor of letters with a concentration in global studies. Gabriel is also the editor-in-chief for the Peace Chronicle. Along with that, he serves on the board of directors for the Quaker magazine Western Friend and is the author of A Fiction Writer's Guide to Peace, Crafting Nonviolent Heroism. Here he is with the fourth Bane, published in Drifting Sands Haibun, issue 11.
Hello, I'm Gabriel the copy editor here at Drifting Sands. I've been doing that since 2021, and I'm going to share one of the first poems that I wrote for this magazine. The prose portion I actually wrote in 2020, and then I wrote the accompanying tanka in 2021 around the time I was adapting it into a tanka prose piece. And in 2020, of course, that was the year of the COVID-19 pandemic. That was also a year in which we had hurricanes in the Caribbean and wildfires across Australia. So all of that was in my mind as I was writing the original kernel of this piece, the prose that was the first part of it. In addition to that, there's a literary influence, especially stylistic, that I want to acknowledge. I'm fond of the Victorian writer John Ruskin, and if you are familiar with Ruskin's works, like many Victorians, he wrote sentences. Not all of his sentences were long sentences, but many of them were far longer than you tend to see today under the influence of later writers like Ernest Hemingway. And so I'm going to start off, before I get to my piece, I'm going to actually read a paragraph from a John Ruskin book that is made up of 2 sentences. And I'll indicate where the break between the sentences comes so you can get a sense of that long John Ruskin sentence style. And this is a work he wrote on his theories regarding political economy. So he starts, "The real science of political economy, which has yet to be distinguished from the bastard science, as medicine from witchcraft and astronomy from astrology, is that which teaches nations to desire and labor for the things that lead to life, and which teaches them to scorn and destroy the things that lead to destruction." So that's the end of the first sentence. And then everything that comes after this is one long sentence. "And if in a state of infancy they suppose indifferent things, such as excrescences of shellfish and pieces of blue and red stones, to be valuable, and spend large measures of their labor, which ought to be employed for the extension and ennobling of life, in diving or digging for them, and cutting them into various shapes; or if, in the same state of infancy, they imagine precious and beneficent things such as air, light, and cleanliness to be valueless; or if, finally, they imagine the conditions of their own existence, by which alone they can truly possess or use anything, such, for instance, as peace, trust, and love, to be prudently exchangeable, when the market offers, for gold, iron, or excrescences of shells, the great and only science of political economy teaches them, in all these cases, what is vanity and what is substance, and how the service of death, the lord of waste, and of eternal emptiness, differs from the service of wisdom, the lady of saving, and of eternal fullness, she who has said, 'I will cause those that love me to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasures.'" So yes, that was one long sentence. And the thing I appreciate about it is while it is one very long sentence, Ruskin has managed to balance it perfectly. It doesn't have the feeling of a disorganized run-on sentence. If you take the time to actually stick with it, to read it, to let it affect your reading capabilities, if you will, it pays off. It's rewarding. It is, in fact, excellent writing, just not the type of writing we tend to do today. So I had the idea of attempting to do a Ruskinian long sentence as the prose, and I wrote that really reflecting on the issues and challenges that we were facing in 2020. And then later, I added what I felt was a complementary tanka to get the final piece. And so that's what I'm going to read for you now. And it's titled The Fourth Bane. If the first Bane is fire, rampaging across an island continent in this forever feverous world, if the second Bane is storm, devastating archipelagos with wind and wave, if the third Bane is plague, stalking the unwary or merely unlucky across a neighbor's breath, then the fourth Bane, I must insist, is some nameless amalgamation of malign qualities, apathy, greed, malice, that checks us from reckoning with the first three Banes. And we rashly suppose that if we can just find the Rumpelstiltskin name for this final Bane, is your name ignorance? Is your name prejudice? Is your name capitalism? Then we will pull the Vorpal sword from Nimue's fabled lake to snicker-snack slice through the last Bane's Hydra heads. Or, less violently, release a magic elixir into all the waters of the world, restoring an original harmony that our dreams tell us must have been. Yet, as I somewhat futilely warn my restive utopian friends, diagnosis and prescription are separate arts, critique and poetics differ, and the person who can identify the thing that's wrong won't always know what to do about it. But don't mistake me. This is hardly a cry for paralysis, but rather a call to embrace ambiguity, experimentation, and struggling in good faith. Or to push even further, changing when we discover we're wrong, offering the space and grace for others to change, and trusting in a process that we won't live to see completed. And to strengthen us for these last several things, converse the fourth Bane, I do offer a tenacious name. Hope. O night terrors, behold what pierces serpent breath fog, golden threads, break of dawn.
Now we have yours truly with riding a wind shear, after which I will read for you Crimping the Fringe. This is Sangita Kalarikil reading Riding a Wind Shear, published in Drifting Sands, Issue 18, November 2022. Riding a Wind Shear. I smooth out my 140-pound watercolor paper and spread water on it with a saturated cotton ball. Stroke by thick stroke, plain, colorless liquid drenches the paper. Now using wet-on-wet technique, let's paint the clouds, I tell myself in the instructor's voice. There's no real instructor, of course, just a voice I make up in my head to anchor the words I had read. I gather a diluted mustard seed size blob of ivory black on the tip of my number 6 nylon brush. A dot, a flick. Color rides the veins in the paper already swollen with water. Gray spreads in different hues and looming shapes emerge. I breathe out slowly as my first nimbostratus forms on paper. Lightning unzips the sky. I ram the accelerator. Lightning unzips the sky. I ram the accelerator. This is Sangita Colorical reading Crimping the Fringe, published in the December 2022 issue of Prune Juice. Crimping the Fringe. My fingers paused at the bottom of my Indian clothes box. The khadi scarf, soft with wear, caresses my hand. I bring white going on blue fabric to my face. Memories woven into the warp and weft of the coarse yet smooth cotton threads sail to me. I breathe deep. Is it sandalwood or is it my mind? Achacha. My grandfather, whose connection with the charkha is even today well known in the village, always wore a dash of the golden sandalwood paste on his forehead. So many years after his passing, stories of his and my grandma's sacrifices for Indian independence are still fresh. The time when they had to sell their only fan in the heat of summer to buy bales of cotton. They taught villagers art of the charkha, to spin bales into fine yarn and then handcraft into slightly coarse fabric. The time when they taught women to read and write in the light of the oil lamps after the day's work. The time when, despite lathi charge injuries, they stubbornly insisted on non-violence. A tiny shiver, a tiny smile. Another deep breath. The sandalwood fragrance has vanished. I carefully double one edge of the tiny stole over another along slightly yellowed fold lines and tuck my memories away, safe. Crack of thunder. Backyard oak gives way to the weight of years. Crack of thunder. Backyard oak gives way to the weight of years. All the credits for today's poems are given in the show notes. At the end, I would like to say my forever thanks for being such a wonderful audience and for supporting us. To our podcast guests, you have our greatest appreciation. You have shared your learning, your craft, and your time with all of us learners of Haibun and Tanka prose. When we find ourselves with more resources, we will be back with more poetry, and hopefully, we can then capture more poets' voices. Thank you. Dhanyavad. The music for this series is by Richard Grahn. This podcast is produced by Richard Grahn. And for the last time, this is Sangita Colorical signing off. And may the season sing you many poems.